Definitely.
When that they've got that clip on, they go, you can get a degree in doing it wrong.
Is that where the one? Is that the one that D minor is the saddest of all?
Yeah.
Oh, right, okay.
And you said that you've got that clip on, doing it wrong.
Right.
Hey, you see these? These are my new thing.
What,
Oh, sorry,
castanets? I thought you had some castanets.
No,
then.
they are what do you call it? Coasters, but they look like floppy disks.
Ah, nice.
Yeah.
See, that's more like it. That's when things used to work.
Absolutely, my Atari never went wrong.
Anyway, the world is listening into our ridiculous conversation. Hello, everyone. You would not believe the stuff that the kind of conversations we have when nobody's listening. But here we are. Welcome to our presentation this evening. I'm going to keep the introduction as brief as I can. So I'm Brian Waters. Brian's already on the jazz. Like I'm Brian Waters.
Sorry.
I'm Brian Waters from the QTube. We're a platform at the moment for composers. We provide films for practice and building a portfolio, and we do little challenges every month with the opportunity to sort of get feedback from Brian and Stefan, who will introduce themselves in a second, and also a chance to be selected to have an orchestra recording session and win a sample library and all sorts of stuff. We have a film at the moment which is in the style of a 1970s kind of cop film, like Bullet and French Connection and all those types of films. So we thought we'd do a masterclass on that type of music, which you don't hear so much. But anyway, these guys will go into it. So yeah, hopefully plenty of you out there are having a go at this Boolean clip that's on the library at the moment. I've already heard some of the submissions, and it's really wonderful to hear what people are doing with it. It's a real chance to do something different and to sort of push the envelope, or maybe even utilize music that you have been playing, but you've never seen an opportunity to use it in a film context. So yeah, embrace that opportunity. We're going to have an hour-long masterclass today on dissonance and abstraction, it's called, and it's about jazz in film music. But before we start, I'll introduce our two experts. So Brian, do you want to give us a quick bio?
Sure. I'm Brian. I work at Leeds Conservatoire, where I'm the deputy head of the School of Music and Education, and I also lecture in film music, and I wrote the degree the current degree in film music at Leeds Conservatoire.
I'm Stefan Gordon. I'm principal lecturer at Leeds Conservatoire as well. I work with Brian on the film music pathway, and I teach. I focus on film studies, directing, screenwriting, also looking at music production as well.
Yeah, and I think that one of the great things about these masterclasses, if you haven't seen any of them before, and indeed the feedback that Brian and Stefan do for everybody that submits, is the fact that we've got these two perspectives. We've got the sort of musical perspective from Brian, and we've got the overarching filmmaking perspective from Stefan, and I think that's incredibly valuable. But I would say that I'm a bit biased, but I really genuinely do think that that's fantastic. And it's worth recognizing that basically you are getting university level expertise and feedback here, which I think is I'm really proud that we're able to bring that to the community. So I think we've got about 300 slides to get through in the next 60 minutes. So let's go. Over to you guys.
Okay. I shall share my screen. Let's do that now, and then let's just move this over here. So before I bring Stefan, just quickly, like Brian said, dissonance and abstraction at the movies through the lens of 60s and 70s progressive jazz. This is a bit specific and a very detailed area, but it's on the back of what Brian said about him doing the Bullet-esque kind of video that you guys have been working on. So that's what's basically fed this session. We're going to be going through these films. We're going to get nowhere near this today. We're probably going to, if we're lucky, we'll get as far as Cape Fear. Okay, and then that leaves the rest open to another time if Brian wants to do another time. So I'm going to just quickly hand over to Steph to just briefly and quickly explain what his angle is. Steph?
If I it's all right if I share as well.
Absolutely, yeah. I'll stop sharing.
Yeah, just really quickly as well on this. Right. So, Right, so my bit, as Brian, hopefully you can all see that, as Brian introduced us at the beginning, is that I'm sort of looking at it from a film studies perspective. And for those that have sat in or listened to any of our sessions before, that's my sort of angle, and that's what I'm looking at now, particularly. And I think I say this to our students all the time, and I sort of maybe sound like I've said this many times before, like an old record. But the thing is that once you, when you're working in film, whatever you're doing, either that's cinematography, whether that's production design, editing, sound design, any of that, is that you are, and this is what for me is absolutely true, is that you're a filmmaker. And so particularly, and I think what we're going to get through today, and hopefully we'll get through as much as we've kind of prepared for, is that when you think of it like that, that the score element and the composer is thinking like a filmmaker, and that actually in quite a lot of cases the score is telling the story as well. So for my bit is that you are a filmmaker, and what's the great thing about these sort of YouTube assignments that you get given is that it's in your hands. I know Brian's made the film clips for you and handed them over to you, but in my view is that you take those on and that you are the filmmaker. So you make those decisions, you decide. I know we're talking about the specialism of jazz and stuff for this, but that's kind of down to you as well to think, well, is that what it needs? So that's what I want to sort of look at, and I want to sort of go through as much of these as I can. Obviously, again, time-wise, we might not get through all of them, but for you to sort of take away and think about this is what is your focus, what sort of tone are you going to apply, thinking about genre, thinking about what your stylistic roots are, and style in general, recurring thematic ideas, and then very much thinking about visual style. But I'll go back to these when after Brian's sort of gotten into what he wants to talk about. So that's my bit.
Cool. I'll just share again. Let's go for that. Okay, let me just bring that down to size. So hopefully you guys can see this. Just to mine's going to take about 20 minutes, 25 minutes, and I'm going to hand over to Steph. So it's going to be a bit different to last time where we did it in little short bursts. I'm going to do a fairly substantial bit. Just to kick off with this thing about how we listen to music and about how we remember it. And I've put there, although the vast majority of listeners do not recognize music literally, so they can't pick out chords out of the air when they listen to music. It is actually the music they remember from different TV shows. Some people understand in a largely emotional way, and this often eclipses the more obvious ways that we remember. To prove this, I've said, you can prove this tomorrow if you want to, by asking somebody to name the actors or characters from a TV show from 20 years ago that they used to like. You'd be amazed how many people aren't able to do that. But if you play them the music, they go to the show immediately. So there is something different about musical memory and about our relationship with music that is well different to other ways of remembering. There's a quote here from this guy who works on the Chicago Tribune. He was basically whinging on about the death of the theme tune. Okay, and he says that's something that TV has lost. This thing about most TV dramas now don't really have a theme tune. They don't have a commercial break theme tune or anything like that. And he talks about, I'm not going to read it all to you, but he talks about Mission Impossible and Ironside, which we're hopefully going to do probably in the second session we do. And he basically blames the executives for wanting to make sure people don't switch off, and that's why we've lost a lot of music. So a lot of TV companies basically do this thing where they sacrifice the music, and yet it's the music that people remember. So my job in tonight's thing is to basically talk about jazz chords, jazz harmony, in a kind of low level, and just to explain it to you. So you're probably wondering, why on earth have I got the icon of the Play School? Play School was a kids TV show from about 30, 40 years ago. When I arrived in London as a session musician in the late 80s, that Play School was the first gig I ever did. and they used to have a trio. And one of the things we used to play, I don't know if you can hopefully see the music we've got there, is a little line, and it basically goes. Hopefully you can hear that, all right? Can you? Is that a bit louder? Excellent. So, and that gives you a kind of mysterious thing. If you then look at bars 3 and 4, this is where that chord comes from. Okay, if I play that to you, let me just turn it up for me slightly this end. Okay, if I play that now, that's bars 3 and 4. That's a classic jazz chord. It's basically a 7th chord with a flat 10, and it gives you that instant kind of retro, kind of 70s jazz feel. You can try that on strings, basically. Can you hear that loud and clear? Yep. Yeah, good. If I try a slightly dirtier string, so. That's the kind of chords we're going to be going through. It's one of the, I've put there, the humble flat 10 chords. If you want an instant, quick, gratifying kind of that jazz thing, stick in a flat 10 chord. Wide, spacious voicing always does the trick. Lots of space between these notes. Okay, so if we now, that chord I just played you, let me just go back to the piano for 1 second. Play you a TV show that I did some work on years. I didn't write the music for this, by the way. I'm going to play you this in context. There's a film made called The Last Days of Lehman Brothers by a great composer called Kevin Sargent, and he uses these flat 10 chords all over the place. So I'm going to go back to strings. Okay, and I'm going to play that first chord, which is a B flat 7 flat 10. Let me just take that. Okay, let's do that again. So that's those first 2 chords you hear coming in. Okay, and the clash you hear in there is between that E and that E flat at the top. Okay, that's your clash. Put the rest of the notes in. There's your kind of quintessential dirty jazz chord. Okay, and if we go to the piano thing there, another well-known device in jazz writing is to basically go into different key centers rapidly. So if you look at this one, okay, this is, we're on bar 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, bar 6 now, right hand side of the top line, and then. So it's that fluctuation between where you go down and up through the key centers. A combination of your flat 10 and basically rapid fluctuation between the C down to the B flat, down to the A flat, blah, blah, blah. That is what gets you that. Also, what this, what happened on this thing I'm going to play in a minute is also this spacious string writing where you'd have. Okay, this is that bar there, E flat chord. Now I'm now going to play you this in situ. Okay, I'm now going to play you this in situ. Let me just get the folder out. Sorry, I seem to have mislaid it. Here we go. Yeah. Okay, so this is a thing called The Last Days of Lehman Brothers. It's about the financial crash of 2008. And let me know if you can't hear this. And now you're going to hear this really dirty jazz thing, which is what I've just been trying to explain to you.
Talk to 100 people, 102 are going to tell you they hate bankers. But most people won't be able to tell you why.
Now there's a chord going to come in a second. Okay, let's just go back to the PowerPoint. Okay, it's this one here, and it's that lift from the B flat 7 flat 10. Okay. play, I'm going to carry the video on. They play these two chords together and they slide up to the second one. So let's just play that one more time. Okay, let me just okay, here we go again.
It can't be. Some of us did dirty jobs to get through
Okay, it's
college.
coming up in a
I know
second.
one woman who paid her way through Princeton working as a call girl for the mafia. Is it because we make a lot of money? Well, some of us do, and some of us don't. In general, people...
Okay, I'm going to take that back slightly. Okay, we're going to go back to the PowerPoint. Okay, and I'm going to play it from there where those sliding strings come up to the B flat 7 flat 10 to the next one, and then there's this really cool little piano lick which is there, which is this. Okay, so it's this C, B flat, A flat 7, and then back to the C chord. Those two things will put you straight away into that jazz world. So let me just play that one more time from where the little strings come in.
Why? Is it because we're privileged? It can't be. Some of us did dirty jobs to get through college. I know one woman who paid her way through Princeton working as a call girl for the mafia.
And now we have the piano thing.
Is it because we make a lot of money? Well, some of us do, and some of us don't. In general, people resent those they
And
perceive
now these
to be on
spacious
top.
strings.
That's how the French Revolution happened. And in the end, perception can matter more than the truth. You could have been born, like I was, on the wrong side of the track.
So it's interesting to me that they actually chose jazz harmonies, and I've put here jazz harmonies and loose instrumentation to actually characterize the financial crash of 2008. And it's often done in films where they're wanting to show you something which is depressing or dark or just difficult area of history. Composers will often use jazz to actually do that, and they did that on this thing I've just showed you there. So that's that one. I've put there harmonic flavor becomes an indelible music calling card. And what I'm talking about there is these spacious strings. Okay. And then the flat 10 chord. And then the slide up to that one. Okay, so that's basically what I'm on about here. Obviously, you guys will get this PowerPoint. So, because I'm very mindful of time, I want to do one more show with you, then I'm going to hand back to Stefan. This has got abstraction, polytonality, jazz extensions, and what I would call a sophisticated rhythmic interplay. This is a TV show from years ago, from the 1970s, late 60s actually, called Ironside. And I want to just play you the music. And the music was written by at that point, a very young Quincy Jones. Okay, everyone knows Quincy Jones, obviously, as Michael Jackson's producer, and that's sadly how a lot of people, the only prism through which he's remembered. But of course, back in the day, he was a fantastic musician and great player, great arranger, great composer, great jazz composer, long before Thriller and all those albums came along. And what he says here, he says, if you don't fully understand music, you end up working for the technology instead of the technology working for you. He said, when I studied at the Paris Conservatoire under Nadia Boulanger in Paris, she would joke that jazz musicians were always the hardest to teach because we would shack up with music before we married it. And what they mean by that is people got involved as players without learning how to read and understanding music properly, as it were. Anyway, she would then say, there's only 12. Now, this is advice. The reason I'm showing you this is because this is sterling advice, basically. There are only 12 notes, and until there's a 13th, we learn everything that everyone has done with those 12. And that is exactly what I did. This is him talking now. To this day, there isn't any type of musical genre or musical experiment that gives me any trouble. I don't care if you're a musician, arranger, composer, engineer, music supervisor on a film or producer. If you want to be a master of your craft, you should endeavour to know everything that has ever been done with 12 notes. Now, I wouldn't go that far. I mean, obviously, that would take you all your lives. But I would say that is generally good advice. Now, he also uses, before I go on to this TV show he also used the same argument in the same interview. If anybody wants to see this, it's an interview by Ben Rogers in Keyboard magazine in 2020. And then he says, come on, the technology is a tool. You have to know what you're building to utilize the tool properly. So he's a big believer in you know how to write music before you start essentially using sample libraries and stuff like that. And this is something that we could probably do another session on at some point, the technology thing and the obsession with technology and particularly sample libraries. And we've spoken to Brian before. We're probably going to do a session on that, just on that itself. Anyway, to come back to Ironside, I want to play this TV show now. This other guy, Jeremy Allen, writing an article on this, talks about funky borderline psychedelic theme from the very unpsychedelic TV show Ironside. Ironside was a detective, American detective series. He was in a wheelchair, and this is in the 1970s. It was written and performed by Quincy Jones and his band at the time. Irrepressible American soul and jazz legends' achievements include being the producer and co-writer of Thriller, which you guys know that. The Ironside theme appeared on the 1971 album Smackwater Jack, and parts of it has been sampled hundreds of times by artists like Drake and Dr. Dre. So although we're delving 50 years into the past here, we are also going to play music which is sampled even to this day. So what I want to do with this one is I want to just play you the various bits. Okay, so if we come out of here and we go to Ironside, okay, let me just, okay, I hope that isn't too loud. Let me just bring that down a bit. Okay, so I'm going to play you the Ironside intro, which is this thing here, okay, and on it, the way he gets into abstract dissonance, if you want to say that, is he basically uses this chord here, which is just a G chord, okay, that 1/3 line down, he has this chord there, and then he has the horns on top of that going, okay, I'll play you the thing eventually, obviously I'll play you the thing properly. Another jazz thing he does is he has two distinct and different rhythmic patterns occupying the same space, and this is a big jazz thing to do if you want to copy this or emulate. You can see there you've got the horn line, got a crotchet triplet line, so it's 3 4 1 do 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 do, okay, the triplet line, and on top of that he's got this straight quaver line that goes do da do da do da da da. So he's got these two things basically fusing with each other. Normally, when you write a straight quaver style piece, the last thing you'd put on it is crotchet triplets. But if you do that, you get these two rhythmic entities kind of rubbing against each other. Okay? And what I'll do is I'll just play you that bit of the video. Let me just go to the video. Okay. So let me just turn that down a bit. So. Okay, coming up in a minute. Okay, now. So what I'm doing, I'll play this to you again when I've finished, but it's this thing where you're writing kind of cross rhythmically. You're writing a straight quaver, do that, do that, do that, 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 and on top of that you've got this do 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 do. You got stuff going across the beat basically, and it's another really good way of kind of discovering jazz and how to use it in a kind of light way. And you'll find that you listen to all the TV shows, the American detective shows from the 1970s, and they're all using this kind of thing. They're all basically managing to use jazz in this way. Okay, so far we've got the dissonance of that first chord. Okay, then we've got the thing I just talked about. But the last thing I want to talk about before I hand back to Stefan is this thing here, and this is probably the hardest thing to actually grasp. Okay, and I'm just going to play you this thing here on the piano. Let me just play you. It's these chords here: A flat, D, D flat, A flat, C flat, D flat. I'll just slow that right down. Okay, so we've got A flat, D, D flat, A flat, C flat, D flat. Now, if I just play you this really quickly, here we go. It's coming in a second. Now, one of the things he did, you do have to persevere with this one, is one of the things he did, okay, so you've got an A flat, you've got straight chords, then he's put trombone, they're trumpets, he's put trombones there, they're all playing the same chord, but then he goes and sticks these two notes at the bottom of every chord that are basically in the wrong key. Okay, that's an A flat chord, but at the bottom you've got an A natural and an E natural. So if I just play that chord, there's your A flat chord, and then that's what he's done there. I'm not making it sound very appetizing, but when I play this piece, you'll realise it. So you've got an A flat chord, and then so you've got two different harmonic worlds basically going at each other. Okay, now let me just play you that little clip again, and I'm going to play along with this, and then I'll play you the TV show. Okay, let's go for this. Where are we? Yeah. I'll play that one more time and just focus on that last chord, where it's a D flat chord on top with the trumpets, and it's a D chord underneath. So I'll play it one more time. And now I'm going to play you the bit where he actually makes it sound half decent, and that is the actual thing itself. Okay, so I'll just play it and then we'll look at the score. Let's just take that back. Okay, it's coming up. And that last chord, that is, if there's anything such as a quintessential jazz chord, that is it. If you listen to all the great jazz arrangers and great jazz composers, progressive jazz composers, 70s, 80s, they're all doing this kind of thing where they're basically using dissonance and they're using what we call polyharmony. They basically got one bunch of instruments playing one chord and the instruments underneath them playing something that's actually a semitone wrong, a semitone out. Let's play that one more time. Okay. Okay, coming up. And what I'll do finally before I hand back to Stefan is just play the whole thing. And again, this will be on the PowerPoint, so you can look at this when you've got more time to grasp it fully. Okay, so we've got a score here. We've got the trumpets on the top, French horns underneath it, trombones, keyboard synthesizer doing that weird police siren thing you can hear in the background. Then we've got the jazz combo at the bottom, the guitar, bass and drums. Okay, that bit we spoke about before is this do-dap, 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 dap, which is straight quavers, 4 to the floor, overdubbed against basically crotchet triplets. Okay, so you get this thing kind of going against each other. And finally, this thing I just went through it with you. So let's just listen to that one more time, and then I will hand back to Stefan. Okay. Okay, let me do. Let's turn it up a bit because my end is quite loud. I presumed it was the same for you. Sorry guys. For me, it's really loud, so I'll turn it up. Let me just play this. Ask him if this is loud enough, Brian. How's that?
That's good.
Is that good? Yeah.
It's deafening for me. I'm not sure.
It is deafening for me as well, actually. I'll do that. I'll suffer this. If somebody said they can't hear it very loud, then I'll turn it up. Right. Let's take it from the bottom, from the top rather, and we're going to start right at the top there with a police siren, and you're going to go through these 3 little things I just mentioned. So here we go. Now, before I hand back, just one last thing to say. This is, unless you've got a great understanding of harmony, it's not the easiest thing to understand. Jazz, especially jazz fusion and stuff like this. But I've tried to give you a couple of 3 or 4 takeaway, quick, easy, cheat sheety kind of things you can do to try and get into that jazz idiom. But essentially, polytonality, dissonance, dissonance here between 2 sections, essentially playing chords a semitone out from each other. And obviously what we looked at before, the flat 10. Okay, the flat 10 is a very important thing in all this, particularly the slidey strings there where the strings go up. Very, very interesting. Just one thing before we go, Lalo Schifrin, who we're going to come to later if we get that far. He said music lives or dies by its arrangement. I spoke to this guy years and years and years ago. This was big turn of the century, I think. And Lalo Schifrin, like most great composers, is a consummate arranger. Most good composers have got an arranger living inside their head. Living rent-free in their head is an arranger at all times. Music is a living, evolving thing, and every style normally has an atypical approach to the arrangement. And this is his words, which kind of act as textural clothes. And that's what he used on all these his films and film scores. And when we come back next time for this, we will be able to do Mission Impossible and stuff like that. He also said, and this is something me and Stefan have said once or twice, don't hide behind your music. Don't be afraid to expose important bits of your music. Don't be afraid to do minimal. Don't be afraid of space. Don't be afraid of silence. Don't fill every available spot of sonic space, because if you do that, basically it's like a painter just literally chucking every colour under the sun onto a canvas, and there's nothing for it to bounce off. Okay, so that was a bit fast and furious, so I apologise for that, but hopefully you can hear it all right, and I'm going to hand back now to Stefan.
Fantastic! Wow, that's amazing. Thank you, Brian. Sorry, Stefan, I'm just going to step into the breach there quickly before you.
Go for it.
I just want to say to people something which is now gone out of my head. It will come back to me, but while I'm trying to remember that, was something that came up in the chat, Brian. I'm not sure whether you can help with this. You might not have the answer at your fingertips, but somebody was asking whether there was a particularly good saxophone library that you were aware of, because they were having trouble getting a decent saxophone sound.
I'll have to come back to you on that, because I don't know the answer to that, but all I know is it's notoriously difficult instrument to sample. I mean, strings are easy, pianos are easy, but there's 1 or 2 instruments out there, which trumpets, for example, solo trumpets, solo trombone, they're really hard. But I will do some research into that, and I will get back to you, Brian.
Okay, fantastic. God,
worries.
I wish I could remember what I was going to say, but anyway, it'll come back to me. Stefan, off you go.
Maybe I'll remind you as I'm going along.
Yeah.
Okay. No, that was brilliant, actually, Brian. That whole thing, because I picked out a few things, and really, it sort of leads me on nicely to where I'm going to start, which was, and as you pointed out, I think, is using music in the right way, of course, and just the power of music. Because when I listened to what you were doing, it was like, that particular hindsight, it's like 70s or late 60s, early 70s detective TV shows. But then when you broke it down and you were playing like the chords, it's going, that's Bernard Herrmann.
Oh God, yeah, absolutely.
You know what I mean? Yeah. And I remember So when we've done this stuff together at college, I've always thought that, and it's a lot of it comes. I know we're going to get onto Bernard Herrmann, but it's like when you sort of deconstruct those chords and just play them, and then you put the string sample on, you go, oh, actually, yeah, there's a Bernard Herrmann
Absolutely.
to it. So that's the kind of brilliance of it, and what it sort of says to me, and where I'm sort of going is the idea that the power of music has, and the fact that it does determine in lots of ways where the film works or it doesn't work. Of course, you've got to be mindful of, as you pointed out, about being very mindful of the film, of course, because that's the bits that I always sort of talk about, where you don't score is just as important. But I think that thing of that it can actually make or break the film in many ways, and this sort of reminds me, because I went to see Twin Peaks the other day, how much actually the success of Twin Peaks is down to the score. Actually, I mean, there's many other great elements to it. Don't get me wrong, but you hear Angelo Badalamenti's music, and you just go, there you go. There's Twin Peaks. So so moving on to that, and what I'm sort of want to talk about is that for composers, and this is, Brian mentioned it in his bit, was about, this is just advice really for us, and we're handing over this kind of information for you to sort of take and sort of run with it. And what's great about what we're doing with the QTube is these chance to sort of, as an exercise in the creative process. So this, what I want to look at, which was where I started, is about, would be for a director, but I think this also is very much focused on a composer as well. So thinking about what is your focus, what is it you want to get out of scoring these clips, and obviously is to sort of get better at what you're doing, but thinking about what sort of tone. I mean, Brian mentioned it, and broken it down for you in his session just now. But is it, when you're using jazz, what kind of jazz? As I say, there's different elements to it. You can go down the Bernard Herrmann route, or you can make it kind of 70s cop show. But what is the tone? And then genre, and I've underlined genre because I've talked about genre before, and that's the bit I really want to sort of focus on for this, is that what genre, because again, the music, it can be its own genre, and of course creative industry is based on the sort of genre, of course. But what is it that, when you suddenly, what kind of music you use might actually determine the kind of genre of the film, and it will influence it. So what genre are you using, and what genre are you applying to the film that maybe already have a genre? So for instance, for this session, Brian, the clip, we mentioned Bullet and that kind of 60s, 70s kind of vibe. So that determines a genre straight away. Are you going to follow that and make it like that? As part of this process, that's absolutely fine, of course, because it's a way of practicing it, but you also can create your own voice and do something very different to that. So these are, I would say, sort of things to consider. So your stylistic roots, what are you interested in? Recurring themes. So for a director, this is massive, and it's the idea that a director is interested in a certain amount of themes that they revisit for each film. So is that, and I think that's something that applies to a composer as well. I mean, I know that they're following the film, but it's the idea of auteur, I suppose, but the idea that you are recognizable. So what kind of sort of thematic ideas are you revisiting? Visual style, and that's another really sort of big one, because if you think about, for a director, obviously the visual style represents who they are, etc. But the other thing is having an understanding of image. I think that's a huge, I mean, it's sort of stating the obvious, but it is something that the composer can forget, because they know about their own craft and what they do in their specialism. But when working with film, it means that it's the image. So bringing the image to life. So it's like, I mean, I've been listening to a lot of podcasts recently, like traveling, going on holiday, etc. and there was one about City Lights by Charlie Chaplin, and by that period we were into the talking picture, and he resisted because he said that film is the universal language of film is silent film. It's about the image, and it's about the music that goes with it. So I think having an understanding of working with the picture is the kind of the roots of this process very much. And then your narrative approach. How do you tell a story? And this is massive, I think, for a composer as well, because it is in your hands as well. How do you tell that story? So again, referring it to Brian's clip that is for this month's assignment, is to think, well, how can I tell that story? I can create my own story out of those images. So definitely, I would say consider these points. So we're going to work our way up to talking about Cape Fear, but I want to sort of just introduce. Obviously, I mean, everyone knows Martin Scorsese, but the idea of what Martin Scorsese as a filmmaker is all about. And then this actually connects with my point about genre, because I just want to play you a short clip, if I can, where he's talking about this. Hopefully you can see that okay.
Yep.
Let me just... Right, okay. So this is a clip from I think it was broadcast on Channel 4 in the late 90s. It's called Martin Scorsese's Personal Journey into American Movies. It was a book and it was a TV series, and basically he goes through the history of American movies. And one of the sections, and I show this to our students on their very first session, on their very first day when I first meet them. And it's, as it says there, the director is a storyteller, and what I sort of say to our students is the idea that remove the word director and put you as composer as storyteller. So let me just play you this.
If you haven't got the story, you haven't got anything. Raoul Walsh used to say this. And this is another cardinal rule. The American filmmaker has always been more interested in creating fiction than revealing reality. I mean, early on, the documentary form was discarded or relegated to a marginal status. For better or for worse, the Hollywood director is an entertainer. He's in the business of telling stories. He's therefore saddled with conventions and stereotypes, formulas and cliches, and all these limitations were codified in specific genres. This was the very foundation of the studio system. Audiences love genre pictures, and the old masters never seemed reluctant to supply them. When John Ford rose in the middle of a tempestuous meeting at the Directors Guild of America in 1950 and introduced himself, this is what he said. He said, "My name is John Ford, and I make westerns." He was not referring to his more honored pictures, such as The Informer, or The Grapes of Wrath, or How Green Was My Valley, or The Quiet Man. I mean, the westerns were what he was most proud of.
Okay, right. So if I just go back to my PowerPoint. Okay, so a couple of, can you see that okay?
Yeah.
No. Oh, you can. Oh, 1 second. Where it's coming up today. Oh, there it is. Right. Okay. Let's see, that's not right. Okay. You see that okay now? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So there's a couple of things that I wanted to pick up on what you said there. So this goes back to sort of genre, and this is obviously my element to thinking about the director and the filmmaking process, is that the idea of genres. So what Scorsese is sort of saying, because basically the brilliance of Scorsese is he's a great filmmaker, but he's also a film historian as well. He's a film fan, actually. And when he says audiences love genre pictures, he also loves genre pictures. But what he's saying is that the fact that it's an industry thing, it was a way that the industry packaged stuff because they knew what audiences wanted, and they created a production line basically. And so that's something to sort of think about, is that on one level, when you're creating, you're part of this industry idea, and that you are churning this out, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But what he's also saying when he's talking about John Ford and the Western is that John Ford was, famous for making westerns, obviously in working with John Wayne, but that he was most proud of that. So it was about personality. So what he's sort of saying is that what makes it work in any sort of creative outlet, but particularly in film, is the idea that you have the industry, but you put yourself in there. So about personality. And so when he says the Hollywood director is an entertainer, absolutely. But they're in a business. So he said they're in the business of telling stories. So if you again shift the word Hollywood director out of the way and put film music or put film composer. So film composer is an entertainer. Now the thing about a composer is that on one level, entertaining musically, so they're skilled at that on their own. But when they work with picture, it's different, because with working with picture, they're also going to be working as a storyteller. So you've got to have sort of the two elements. So film music is entertainment, but it's in line with the film itself, which is also obviously telling the story. And the bit that I particularly like about that clip, and it's obviously very brief, is when he says that therefore saddled with conventions and stereotypes, formulas and cliches, which we know, and so and it's good to know those things. But once you've known them and you're familiar with them and you're comfortable using them, is to then put your own stamp on them. So that's what, again, coming back to the Q-tube stuff is great, is because you can develop in your understanding of conventions and formulas and cliches, but then as you progress, you put in your own stamp on it within a specific genre. So that's, but he also used the word limitations. So he's perhaps suggesting that, by just working under this kind of framework, that you are sort of limited or to what you can do. So personal expression is sort of big part of it. And so when he talks about individual directors, he's talking about the idea, because he mentioned them. He talked about Raoul Walsh, he talks about John Ford. So I'm going to get on to Cape Fear. So there was two images. One is Max Cady on the right from Cape Fear, and the other is Travis Bickle from Taxi Driver. And again, I certainly won't get to Taxi Driver today, but I think the idea that the understanding that he's a big fan of genre filmmaking, but he's also looking at reworking it and creating his own kind of identity. So when he talked about Raoul Walsh later on in the clip, which obviously didn't show you, he talks about the emotional impact of cinema. So he said that Raoul Walsh was a black and white early filmmaker, and that he was creating narratives where you're rooting for the bad guy, not necessarily. So the idea of good and bad. So as it sort of says there, so Scorsese wasn't necessarily working in genres as such, but he was debating them, deconstructing them, arguably, like the directors that inspired him. He was reimagining genre frameworks altogether in favour of character and theme. But that's not to say that the older pictures he's dismissing them. I don't think he is, but what he's saying is that there was strict frameworks in place, and a lot of these directors that he was interested in were using those frameworks, but trying to drill down into them and get into sort of like a deeper element to them. So Cape Fear, again, I'm mindful of time, so I want to sort of get as much as I can. Now, some basic stuff about Cape Fear. Cape Fear is a 1962 film remade by Scorsese in 1991. Now I do this with our students actually. I run a second year industry module, and we look at movie taglines. So we look at the poster basically, and if you look at the poster, which is a great poster. You've got this whole, the image with the rip in it to sort of say, this is a fractured, this is sort of there's something sort of unsettling about this, of course. And then you've got the eyes, but then you've got on top of the film itself it's a Martin Scorsese picture. So you have the personality, and in that clip, he mentioned John Ford. He's talking about the personality of the artist, the director, etc. But the other thing is to look at the tagline, and I say this to our students: is like, think about writing to a movie tagline. Now, if you look at the tagline, it says Sam Bowden has always provided, has always provided for his family's future. So that's in the past. So there's something's different, something's changed. So where I'm going with this is that in Scorsese's version of Cape Fear, is that the protagonist, who seems so in the old style genre, it would be good guy versus bad guy. What Scorsese does is that actually the good guy could quite possibly be the bad guy as well. And what happens is that the good guy in Scorsese's version of Cape Fear is actually not as good as we think, and there's a kind of flawed character, and he's hiding the truth. So in some ways, composers writing to taglines or thinking about taglines is another great sort of entry point into this. So anyway, Martin Scorsese's Cape Fear. So it's a remake, obviously, and it was originally developed by Steven Spielberg. This is kind of sort of basic information about the film that people have talked about over the years. Spielberg intended to direct it, but he felt it wasn't really right for his style of directing. And instead he offered it to Scorsese, and they agreed to swap projects because Scorsese was developing Schindler's List. So this is an interesting thing about, what would it have been like what would Schindler's List have been like if directed by Martin Scorsese, which is interesting on it, and probably a lecture on its own, actually. But anyway, the projects what turned out to be pivotal in both directors' careers, as we know, with Schindler's List, it became such a success, and he got the Academy Awards that Spielberg was after for a very long time. So, what was Scorsese's motivations in working on Cape Fear and remaking it? Well, he wanted to explore genre filmmaking. He loves genre films, as he talked about. You can tell from that clip his passion for it. But he wanted to explore themes of guilt, justice, and vengeance, like he had in Taxi Driver, and other previous films. Financial pressures as well was very much part of that, because his previous film, his two previous films, was The Last Temptation of Christ in '88, and then Goodfellas in 1990. Successful, but The Last Temptation of Christ was a controversial film, so there was problems. So he needed a big hit basically for the studios, and maybe he thought this was the one to do that, which it was. It was very successful. To continue his collaboration with De Niro, and it was both a career move and a creative challenge, actually, turning a thrill into something uniquely his. Now, again, I'm mindful of time, so I really wanted to show both clips, actually. Have we got time for me to do this, Brian? If I show... Yeah. So my point being, and again, I could talk for ages, is that the original Cape Fear is a Bernard Herrmann score. And I always feel for the original director, J.D. Thompson, because when you hear the score, you just go, Hitchcock. And it's not a Hitchcock film, because it's so instantly recognizable, because Bernard Herrmann's done the score, that's what you suddenly think. Now, the other thing to then consider is that Scorsese, when he'd made his version of the film, he kept the score. It was reworked and stuff, and Brian will obviously sort of talk about that, but it was Bernard Herrmann's original score. So if I show you I've got loads more slides which I could go through, but I'm just mindful that I was just seeing it's 3 minutes to 7. Let me just show you both versions. Right. So this is the 1962 version. Hang on, let me just make it full screen so you can see it better. Right, okay, right. Here we go. Okay, right, let me come out of that one and then I will show you Martin Scorsese's version. Right, okay. Let me. You see that okay? Yeah. So we have the whole credit sequence. So just again, mindful of time, because I won't be able to play the whole 5 minutes of that. Right, let me just move it forward to. I'll give you that bit there. Let me just go a little bit more forward to the right.
My reminiscence. I always thought that for such a lovely river, the name was mystifying, Cape Fear. And the only thing to fear on those enchanted summer nights was that the magic would end and real life would come crashing in.
Okay, Katie, moment you've been waiting for. Any people coming for you, Katie?
What about your books?
Already read them.
Right, okay, so just one more bit really quickly, actually. The other really interesting thing about that, so that would be, to me, I think it would be like, well, that's where you cut the music, but it's really interesting because it carries on. through this bit here as well. And it goes to there. And to me, that's just really, obviously really going to film the moment. And even when they go inside, actually, and there's an interior, so it goes from exterior to interior. Again,
the idea is to resolve.
Before, the director would go, well, let's cut it from where we meet Max Cady for the first time, and then we go to the house, we cut it. But if they've decided to carry it on, but to then go from exterior to interior and still carry it on,
the tension.
Quite remarkable.
I need to find a motif that's about movement. Not the most mind-blowing concept for a travel agency, but what the hey.
Normally,
like arrow,
if that was
maybe?
for our students, I think you really need to rethink that. But because what we're talking about here is the idea of it being a remake, and a big part of it's sort of embedded in a kind of genre, and it's almost a genre piece, then it's kind of different, really. I'm not sort of saying it's right, but it's very much different. So just very quickly, my sort of questions to consider is, what is a film genre, and what is a film genre to you guys? What's your connection to a film genre? Can a Scorsese film be a genre piece? So if you're familiar with Scorsese stuff before Cape Fear, you wouldn't necessarily ever think of him as a genre filmmaker. But was it the creative choice of keeping Bernard Herrmann's score the reason why Scorsese's version of the film is classed as a genre piece? And also, why did Scorsese choose to keep the 1962 score, and what was the result of that? And here's my other, and I don't necessarily say this to Brian before, but I don't necessarily think this is true. I think it's an interesting question. Does the narrative make it a Scorsese film? And what I mean by that is that both versions of the film start with the bad guy, Max Cady, but the first one is just walking along. The second one is a character-driven piece. We see the pictures on the wall. We see what books he's reading. We see his determination and his motivation. It's much more character-led. So does that put it into a more of a Scorsese film? And what bit of it is a genre film? And is that what the score's doing? Because it's the detail that Scorsese's put in there. And you only have to look at the books. If you have a look at the clip again, just look at what books he's reading, and it gives you an insight. I think there's a book in there called The Cell Within, and so the title of it is giving you these kind of details. But what that score does, whether it makes it feel odd, which it does, it's adding drama. It's adding melodrama, actually, in lots of ways. So does that last question capture the dual identity of Cape Fear? Is it part auteur cinema, or is it part Hollywood thriller? So basically, I'm definitely out of time now, I realise. So I just want to hand back to you, Brian, briefly on this about Cape Fear.
Sorry, which Brian are you talking to?
You, Brian.
Well,
Morrell,
I've got a bit on Cape Fear, which is about 10 minutes. So it's entirely up to Brian. We can leave it there, or we can carry on. I don't mind either way.
I'm happy if you guys are happy to do 10 minutes more. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Let me share. There we go. And there's a picture of my cat. Here we go.
Incidentally, I just remembered the thing that I wanted to share.
Okay.
Can I interrupt here briefly?
Go for it, yeah.
So on our website, we have this page now which is relatively recent, which is a summary of these masterclasses, which includes all of the videos, such as this one, and alongside it a bit of a summary, and then the ability to access the slides, and in some cases also a cheat sheet. So there will be a cheat sheet to accompany this one, actually, and we'll also make these slides available, and we'll obviously be doing a follow-up video from this one as well, because we've just got scratching the surface again. So I just wanted to highlight that for people, that's something that you can check out. So you'll find it on the website under education and then masterclasses, and it'll take you to this page with a summary of all of these masterclasses. Over to you.
wrote the original thing, he wanted it to be a combination of dissonance and also jazz. And you're probably thinking, when I've put blues here, but if you actually go to that initial little phrase, okay, can you hear that all right? Is that loud enough? Yeah. So basically he had this phrase that goes, I'm going to turn it up for myself actually, because it's not really loud. Okay. If you look at that phrase there, that's him basically putting some jazz in there by putting the blue note, which is the B flat. And that was him basically integrating jazz into it. If you look at I'm going to play the music now, and I've got the horn line there and the string line. Now, if you remember from what Stefan played you already, you've got this string line at the top there, which basically goes up. And the bottom string line is basically meanwhile going. This is something that Bernard Herrmann did quite a lot, where he didn't really deal in absolute finite chords. He would create lines of counterpoints, a counterpoint that basically reacted against each other. And if we look at these lines here, okay, your top line's going down and your bottom line is going up. We call that contrary motion, and he's got that everywhere. He's got that in the string line that's going down, he's got that in the opposing string line on the basses that's going up, and even on the French horns there, where he's got this thing that goes two French horn lines that basically are opposing each other. Okay, so if we go back to this one, if I ask you, I'll play this now again. Let's just play the audio. Okay, let me just fast forward this to the right bit. Here we go. Okay. So we're about to come in on that bit that Steph played you. Yep, sure. So I'm going to start from there, take it back, and then we'll look at the PowerPoint, which I'll make bigger, and it's that line there. So let's just run this. And we come to this bit here. Now this bit here. And what I wanted to say about that one, just quickly, is that with Bernard Herrmann, he wasn't really a big fan of melodies at all. He didn't really believe in them. He basically used to write little sonic bursts, we used to call them. And if you got this thing, you've got the French horn line there at the top, you've got the string line there. And if I said to you which bit of this is the melody, then it's difficult to pinpoint which bit is. You've already had this, which is obviously the melody here, because that's all there is. And that's what we call horizontal harmony. Okay, it's just a line, but the line is basically insinuating and suggesting a chord. So if I play the top line, okay, when you hear that, in your mind you will basically develop a chord to fit that. And that's one of Bernard Herrmann's other big things, is to basically horizontal harmony. So there isn't really a dominating melody on this. You got the French horns, you got this really powerful high string line. And this is what he said. He said, melody is not a place or a time or an instrument or a stave. Ultimately, melody is just a function. Melody can be everywhere and it can be anywhere. Obviously, we're programmed to go searching for the melody, just as we're programmed to search for the foreground and background on a picture. but that wasn't Bernard Herrmann's world at all. So he's got unaccompanied melody on that bit, contrary motion on that bit. Okay, it's never total dissonance, because if you look occasionally, I put a red bubble around the bits where you actually settle on an actual chord. Okay, so you get all these abstract chords, but these ones with red around them are normal chords: an E minor, an A flat major 7, and a B flat minor. But you look at how rare they are, because this thing is always on the move. Harmonic color changes every single beat. Solo note there, okay, when you've got the high strings. Okay, you got the strings there playing 3 beats, but straight away on beats 2 and 3, the horns are playing something different each bar, each beat. The point I'm making is that the fact that he changed the harmonic complexion every single beat, what that does, and Bernard Herrmann, of course, is the master, so he knows this, it creates what we would call a restless feel, because the piece never really has an ending. Okay, it's not what we call goal-orientated music, Bernard Herrmann. Bernard Herrmann hated endings, and he would basically prefer a fade out to anything else, okay, because he never really finished a piece properly. And his idea that if we did that, then it became regular normal music and not film music. Okay, that's the second page, and again it changes virtually every beat. So if you're trying to emulate this kind of writing, get the textures right, obviously, but also look at what's going on here. It's basically changing the harmonic complexion every single beat. And I've played this theme to a lot of people, and none of them have clocked the fact that he basically wanted the blues in there, and that his idea of going was basically that was him basically taking the blues scale and sticking it on a load of frightening trombones and French horns with a load of searing strings behind it. So he was very into conceptualization, as we talked when we did Psycho a few months ago, very into watching the film and not just going to the piano, just thinking about what the textures were going to be in his head before he wrote a single thing down. He wasn't big on he thought that playing a musical instrument was limiting as a composer. Now, that's all very well to say that, because he used to hear things in his head, and he would write everything down on paper, and he used to hear it in his head. And his big mantra was that if he had 10 ideas that he wrote down on paper, 9 of them would end up in the bin, but the one that would make it is the one that would be genre defying and brilliant, like the shower scene to Psycho. Nobody ever would sit at a keyboard and actually say, right, I'm going to play this and play those weird chords. That is somebody who basically had an idea in his head. Why don't I try X? Wrote it all out, and only then went to the piano to see if it actually worked. And it's a weird way of writing music, but it is one, if you can bear to go through it, it is one that can actually bear dividends. And he famously said, just for a hand back, he said, I think this is hilarious, I don't need people to walk down the street humming the theme to Psycho. I just expect them to remember it. I don't expect them to remember it musically. All I want is for them to remember that it terrified them. So he basically thought about music in a completely different way. But I think, to be honest, just to finish off, it is sobering to think that his initial mandate was to create a blues scale, a kind of blues feel, and then stick it on a load of instruments that were the most un-blues-like you can think of. Second thing is he doesn't stick to a melody and supporting chords. You've got a narrative there on the French horn, separate narrative on the strings, and a separate narrative with the strings going the opposite direction. And all these together don't really work. They don't really fit perfectly musically, and that's the whole point. That's what he wanted. And I'm not suggesting for a minute that you guys go away and try this, but it is a decent idea to try and get away of chords and supporting melody. And if you look at Ironside, when you get the PowerPoint, if you look at Ironside again, and that thing we looked at, and even that very first clip I played you of the Lehman Brothers thing, none of it is really, none of it is melody heavy. It's all basically bunches of harmony that are existing in consort with each other. So that's just something to take away from this, hopefully. Right, I will stop sharing. And we got as far So next time, if we carry on with this, we're going to start off from Taxi Driver, and that's Bernard Herrmann as well. And then Steph's got a load to say on Taxi Driver, so we can start there next time if we end up doing a second one. So I'll stop sharing.
Just really quickly.
Sorry.
Just really quick. So just to sum up as well, is that what Brian said actually, and we've talked about this a lot with Bernard Herrmann about conceptualization. So one of the great things is that it's obviously and it is genre defining about his work on Psycho, and he obviously worked very closely with Hitchcock on it, and they looked at the characters. So, but what it's become so iconic as then so with Cape Fear 2 years later, Bernard Herrmann's very much his distinctive style is placed on that film, and it makes it a Hitchcock film, but that's not to sort of lessen it in any way. It's still very much trying to push the boundaries. But then where I'm going with this is that when it came to Scorsese doing it, he was taken the whole idea of breaking genre down a bit, making it character driven and maybe more morally complex stories. That's borrowed from what he was doing with Psycho. It's just that it's so recognizable to then put it onto Scorsese's version is that it immediately reminds them of the old stuff, and it immediately reminds them of Hitchcock. So it's basically the power of film music is my final point, really. So,
I think that that intro to Cape Fear, I think that's like a mega slowed down version of the shower scene, because it's just got those high pulsating strings. Instead of it going whip, 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 they're going basically long notes, and I just think that's Bernard Herrmann through and through.
I know, and also, I mean, and the combination of that with the way Scorsese starts Cape Fear, it's really brilliant actually. When he starts, it's with the daughter looking straight at the camera and delivering that line. That's almost Scorsese using that character to talk to you, talk to the audience, and tell you in a way what his agenda is, and the idea that he's focusing on the complexities of the characters. I'm done with that. Then, I mean, that bit's silent. Then we cut to Max Cady in his prison cell, and bang, you get that score. It's very dramatic, but again, it's the detail in that cell gives you so many layers, so multi-layered. So that's why I was thinking
when you played the very first version of Cape Fear, the actual pictures are very innocent. It's just a guy walking through the park, and I remember thinking, why don't we do this thing next time where we play the film, but I'll just play the kind of music you would expect on that. Whereas what they did was just throw this completely disproportionate music at it, and that, I think that's typical of both of them, of the filmmaker and the composer particularly, to say, no, we're not going to do some string thing, we're going to put some really pulsating, frightening music behind this. And this is a guy walking through a park. It's really weird that. Anyway, Brian, sorry, back to you.
Yeah, no, fantastic. And I mean, I mean, we could go on, how easy it is for us to start talking and going off on tangents. I mean, it's so rich. I absolutely love it. And I hope that the audience here have really got a lot of food for thought out of this, and food for doing, food for creating. I mean, go and play with these ideas and see what you can apply, especially to this bullying clip, but anything, you look at the some of the horror type clips that we've got in the library, and you could really have some fun experimenting with some of these ideas, I think. And even some of the innocent clips, and maybe subverting, as you say, he's kind of subverting what you might expect from the visuals with the soundscape, and
Well, it's the same as in Psycho when you get that cityscape thing, where the camera comes down to the window, and if you played that, you could write a completely different score for that would completely reorientate that. Whereas what Bernard did for that was just, it made you realise that something dodgy is happening in this hotel room. Something dodgy is going to happen in this film. Someone's going to die. So it isn't going to end well for one of them.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for shining a light on some of the techniques and tricks and ideas that are there. That's brilliant. So I want to just finish, I suppose, by saying let us know in the comments if you'd like a follow-up on this. I'm sure that you would. Keep an eye on the website for those slides and for the cheat sheet, which we'll be working on almost immediately that this finishes. And try and get your submissions in for this bullion thing by September the 1st. It'll be 10 o'clock in the morning, the cut-off UK time, as usual. And we look forward to hearing those and giving you feedback. And we've introduced lots of changes this month, so try and keep pace with us. So we are phasing out the starter and premium memberships. We're giving you 50% discount to upgrade for the rest of this month. And then we're looking at increasing the price on our main membership. So it'd be a good opportunity now to get the annual membership before the price increase. And finally, we've introduced this opportunity to get money back from the QTube by bringing other people in to the community. So there's all sorts of good things going on. But good luck everyone with Bullion. Thanks Brian and Stefan for your time, as always. And I look forward to the next one. So thank you.